In 2015, a modern European country was on the verge of financial collapse. Banks were shut down. ATM withdrawals were restricted. Pensions were frozen and not paid. And all of this happened in a country that gave the world democracy, philosophy, and money itself. Yes, I'm talking about Greece. This is not an ancient history story. A country using the euro, a member of the European Union, tied to one of the world's safest currencies. And yet, it came to the edge of bankruptcy. So how? How did a country using the same currency as Germany and France end up going door to door begging for bailout packages? And more importantly, why should this matter to you? Because what happened in Greece was not just a local crisis. It was a living example of how the modern financial system actually works. How debt turns into a tool of power. How sovereignty erodes when money runs out. It all happened right here. Let's rewind a bit. Greece joined the euro in 2001. This meant extremely cheap borrowing for the country. For years, Greece had lived with high debt and large budget deficits. But now it could borrow from markets at interest rates almost as low as Germany's. And naturally, it borrowed. Public spending increased. Government salaries rose. Infrastructure projects began. Some investments were genuinely useful. But a large portion went into a bloated bureaucracy and an inefficient tax system. Tax evasion was almost normal. Government revenues couldn't keep up with spending. But no one really cared. Because money was flowing. Until 2008. When the global financial crisis hit. Investors started looking much more carefully at everything. And when they looked at Greece's numbers, it became clear that something was very wrong. In 2009, the real deficit was revealed. 15%. Far above European rules. At that moment, trust vanished. Interest rates exploded. Greece could no longer borrow from the markets. And in 2010, it had no choice but to ask the EU and the IMF for help. But that help wasn't free. The first package, worth $110 billion, came with harsh austerity conditions. Taxes increased. Wages were cut. Pension reforms were imposed. But instead of recovering, the economy shrank even further. Unemployment exploded. Youth unemployment passed 60%. Hospitals, schools, and small businesses collapsed. And the irony was this. The debt didn't fall. It grew. Because as the economy shrank, the debt-to-GDP ratio became even worse. In 2012, a second bailout arrived. $130 billion. Private investors took losses. But the burden was once again placed on the people. In 2015, the Greek people went to a referendum. They said, "We do not accept these terms." But a few days later, the government was forced to sign an even harsher agreement. Why? Because leaving the euro would have meant total chaos in the short term. At that moment, Greece realized this. Its economic sovereignty was already gone. Budgets, taxes, spending. They were no longer decided in Athens, but in Brussels and Frankfurt. This was nothing new. It happened to the Ottoman Empire. It happened to Egypt. Those who lend the money eventually become the ones who rule. The flag still flies. But the decisions belong to someone else. The same thing happened in Greece. So what was the result? A lost decade. A smaller economy. But still massive debt. So why does this matter today? Because the same story is now being written elsewhere. Sri Lanka, Argentina, Pakistan. And even in developed economies, debt is rising rapidly. The lesson is simple, but painful. Debt is invisible in good times. But in bad times, it takes away freedom. This applies to individuals. And to nations. Greece fell like a collapsed empire. Not with soldiers. But with numbers. And this reminds us of one thing. History doesn't repeat itself exactly. But it always rhymes. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe and like the video. History hides the answers. I just show you where to look.